Cheddar, the most popular cheese in the world, undoubtedly. No questions asked. The most loved, the most celebrated, the most enjoyed. Who doesn't love cheddar? I mean, really, I don't think I've met anybody. So what makes cheddar a cheddar? Because cheddar should have been a cheese that was name protected, but it never did. So everybody can make cheddar. What makes cheddar a cheddar? Well, first off, let's talk about cheddar. Cheddar, where does it come from? Anybody got that? Wisconsin. That a boy. That a boy. But originally, long before we were here. England is right. So, and they are most proud of this cheese, and rightfully so. Absolutely rightfully so. So Cheddar is actually a town in the UK, on the west side of England. It's also a type of cheese, right? And it's also a method. So cheddar isn't a cheddar unless it's cheddared. It's gone through the cheddaring process. But when you get the curds and you get them, and they basically kind of drain out all the way, and now you've got like this just flat, big slab of curds that have been collected. And they go through and they cut it first off, and then they start to, they cut it into pieces that are like, about this big, and they start to stack them on top of one another. And they just go right down the vat and they stack it about 5 high, and they just keep stacking it, which is now compressing. The curds want to be together. They want to form. And it's amazing how the elasticity, how they will do that. At that point, when they're nice and 5 high, then it goes through this milling process, and they start to chop it all up into tiny little curd portions. And that's the cheddaring process. It's that stacking and that milling process that makes a cheddar. Then they put it into little molds like this, and it all comes together. But that's exactly why when you cut into a cheddar, it crumbles. Now, not the one in your grocery store, mind you. When you have cheddars that are more factory made and homogenized, which means that the milk has been mixed up, really, really sped up, and all the fat molecules break. And they do that for an even distribution of the fat molecules, which makes it more consumable because all the cheese looks the same. So on our consumer palate, we're like, oh, I want it to always look the same because our minds are trained that way. But when you're making artisan products and goods, they're not all supposed to be the same. They might not look the same. And that's what's beautiful about them, is that they're handmade. And so when you get a cheddar that's nice and crumbly like this, it's not been homogenized. It's not gone through this crazy, commodity-like process. These are handcrafted cheeses, and that's why they're better, and that's why they're more expensive, but that's why they taste so much better. So what do we think of this cheddar? This is a 2-year vintage reserve from the UK. Now you start to taste those crunchy little things going on, right? Texture-wise. So, glad you asked. So, those little crunchy things. So what happens when the aging process, we've talked about this, it's losing its weight, right? Well, what happens when the cheese loses weight is it dries out. And so what is chemically happening is that the casein, which is the protein that's found in milk, as well as the calcium, starts to break down. And that's what you're getting, is these little crunchy little pockets of crystallization. You might see it when you cut into a Parmesan, and you see a little hole, and you see these like little white crystals all around it. And that's not mold. That's fine. That's the way that the cheese is. But that's what those crunchy pockets are. It's all that kind of breaking down and really kind of adding texture and fun flavor. So if you go and you buy a Crackle Barrel, whatever, that just says, it's a medium, sharpness, you're probably looking at a cheese that's only 4 months aged, whereas this is 2 year, So there's a whole different flavor. And remember I was talking about that 10 and that 12 year? Oh, sister. Oh, yeah. Well, glad you asked or said that, because in my recipe for, by the way, maybe the best grilled cheese in town, just saying, I might have it at my shop. That's for you to decide and let me know. But this is one of the cheeses that I throw into that blend. I do a 3-cheese blend for that cheese, for that grilled cheese sandwich, and this is what I use. I use a 2-year vintage reserve cheddar because you don't want the entire thing to be cheddar because it'd be one-dimensional. So I'll do also a little cave-aged Gruyere, which kind of rounds everything out. And then I do a mild, young truffle cheese, because who doesn't love truffles? We already talked about that. But I don't use a hard, aged, sharp one. I do one that has a nice meltability, and it just kind of all together comes together and might be a good sandwich.